Hello, everyone. I hope and pray that you're well. I just want to talk a little bit about Audible. This isn't a commercial for them, but I've been listening to books on Audible for the past 30 months, 2.5 years I've been subscribed. So that means there's been 30 books that I've downloaded and I've listened to, I think 27 out of them, out of the 30 so far. And here I am in front of my bookshelf. Lots of books. People come into my office and say, wow, that's a lot of books. Have you read them all? The truth is I haven't, but I've used all of them for reference at some point or another. And there's many that I have read. But in terms of, Audible, I'm realizing that I'm a better listener than I am a reader. So I'm really enjoying that newfound connection with stories. And according to Audible Stats, I've listened for a total of 19 days and 18 hours. I mean, that's a lot of listening. The books that I listen to, that I choose, I would put them into 4 categories, basically. There are novels, and then there's books about popular theology and Christian leadership. And then there are biographies that are Christian, and then there are biographies that are mostly about sports. And so I just finished a fantastic autobiography by Philip Yancey, his memoirs. And I'm actually sitting in front of my kind of Philip Yancey section. I think I have 8 or 9 books by Yancey, which I have read. And the memoirs by Yancey, I think, are brilliantly crafted and very passionately read by Yancey himself. He does such an excellent job of that. But it was also so good to listen to his memoirs, because despite the pain in his life, Yancey really clings to the grace of God. He tells his story, but then there's no real kind of tidy ending. And he kind of puts out there that knowing the grace of God doesn't just neatly explain all of life, but it does allow Yancey to accept the messiness of his life with kind of this same grace, a version of this incredible grace of God. And so I've been wondering a little bit about what it is that attracts me to biography, right? And over the last couple of years, I've listened intently on the sports side to Mark Messier and Ken Dryden and Wayne Gretzky, and then also to comedians like Mike Myers and Trevor Noah. Those stories were all compelling. But I realized that I'm just more attracted to Christians who are writing these redemptive biographies that reflect the biblical stories. And so, I mean, even on my bookshelf here, I just kind of put out Eugene Peterson and Ruth Everhart, Woltersdorf, Lauren Windner, and I guess, Paul Henderson kind of bridges the sports Christian kind of divide with his book, The Goal of My Life, another memoir. Anyways, and here I'm talking about Yancey, right? And the attraction. What's the attraction of these Christian biographies? And I think it's summarized for me in this quote that I've long been a fan of, a quote from Frederick Buechner, who writes a memoir of his own. He actually writes 3 different autobiographies in different places, but this is one of them where he tells part of his story, Telling Secrets. And I'm just going to read a section of it. He writes, "This is all part of the story about what it has been like for the last 10 years or so to be me. And before anybody has the chance to ask it, I will ask it myself, who cares? What in the world could be less important than who I am and who my father and mother were, the mistakes I've made together with the occasional discoveries, the bad times, the good times, the moments of grace? If I were a public figure, and my story had had some impact on the world at large, that might be some justification in telling it. But I am a very private figure indeed, living much my life out of the way of the mainstream of things in the hills in Vermont, and my life has had very little impact on anybody, much except for the people closest to me and the comparative few who've read the books that I've written and been in one way or another touched by them. But I talk about my life anyway, because if on the one hand hardly anything could be less important, on the other hand, hardly anything could be more important. My story is important not because it is mine, God knows, but because if I tell it anything like right, the chances are you will recognize that in many ways it is also yours. Maybe nothing is more important than that we keep track, you and I, of these stories of who we are and where we have come from, and the people we've met along the way, because it is precisely through these stories, in all their particularity, as I have long believed and often said, that God makes himself known to each of us most powerfully and personally. If this is true, it means that to lose track of our stories is to be profoundly impoverished, not only humanly, but also spiritually. And so, friends in Christ, as you pay attention to your story, and as you listen carefully to the stories of those around you, may the peace of Christ be with you all.